Hello there, Aries. Thank you so much for stopping by. This is your Aries Tarot Insights. I am recording this on the 24th of July, 2017, 8:49 in the morning, Mountain Time in the United States. They tell me that these videos are good up to about a month, is what I'm hearing from people who have watched them before. Basically, we're going to be looking at one life cycle that you're going through right now. And a life cycle is basically something that sets you up to learn a lesson or have an experience. And so we're going to look at the setup for that lesson or experience, the lesson or experience itself, and then we're going to look at what happens as you integrate that lesson or experience into your life. So we all have several life cycles running at the same time in different areas of our lives, and they tend to overlap a lot. So one life cycle can be mostly about one thing, and then it'll draw in fringes of other things as well as we're looking through here. That's pretty normal. And so really, how fast you go through a life cycle depends a lot on how quickly you embrace or how much you resist the lesson or the experience of the life cycle. So that really is based on free will. So I've seen life cycles last as little as 20 minutes. Excuse me, I think I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. So I've seen life cycles last as little as 20 minutes, and I've seen them last actually for years, just depending on the situation. But I would say a good average is probably about 28 days or a month, about a moon cycle. Let's see. Everything that we look at in the setup for your life cycle will probably be present tense. You'll probably be able to recognize that. The lesson or experience and what happens as you incorporate that lesson or experience or the fulfillment of the life cycle may still be coming in the future, or you may be beginning to experience that. You may be very near the end of your life cycle and know exactly what I'm talking about for all of it, but you'll know exactly where you are as we go through here. Sorry about the interruption after the introduction, but I do have your cards cleared now. I took a little nasal spray earlier for allergies, and it was being a little hard on me. Figured y'all did not need to see that on the camera, so let's take a peek here at what life cycle spirit wants to talk about for Aries. July 24th. Oh, what's going on? All right, so your first card, which I totally thought I was drawing one card, is actually two cards, and these talk to me about your environment. I don't want you to pay too much attention to what these cards actually are, because in this position, what you would normally interpret them as is not necessarily even in play at all, and that really applies to everything for this whole spread. So basically, what do we have showing up for your environment? First of all, you need to know that your environment is any place where you have energy or effort invested. Most times it comes up as home, other times it comes up as work or as school. Okay, so I've got a few things kind of hitting me here. Let me see what's the most dominant out of these messages. Excuse me. All right. So, first of all, for some of you, I feel like in the privacy of your own environment, or I guess it could be like in a school situation, you are learning mediumship. And when I say a school situation, I mean a school that would specialize in something like that. Like, what was maybe something similar to Hogwarts? We have something similar to Hogwarts in Boulder, Colorado, the Boulder Psychic Institute. I did go there for a little while way back when. I shouldn't say way back when, it was just a few years ago. Anyway, this could be something that's happening in a school that actually helps you with this, but for some of you, you are learning mediumship, or if you're not formally learning mediumship, your mediumship is expanding in some environment that you're in, okay? I hate this when readers go with, if it's not that, then maybe it's this, and if it's not that, then maybe it's this. That drives me nutty. But unfortunately, that's what I've got going on here as far as stories for your environment, guys. So I'm going to be one of those for right now. The other thing that I have coming up with the environment is that you are feeling very isolated. Maybe you're even isolating on purpose. It looks like even though you're isolated, that you are in communication with someone who has crossed over. For some of you, this is going to be a particular someone who has crossed over that you're communicating with. Now, when I say communicating with, I really mean that word very loosely, because I happen to believe that to communicate with someone that has crossed over, all we have to do is actually think about them and they can hear our thoughts about them, or think towards them. Like if you talk to somebody, you think to somebody who's crossed over. So that is my idea of communication with somebody who has crossed over. Also, you can be receiving messages from somebody who has crossed over. So it's hard for me to imagine that this is happening with all Aries. Maybe it's just with the Aries that are watching. And for some of you, it's hard for me to imagine that this is going to resonate for all of you. So if it doesn't, that's okay. You don't have to write to me about it. Maybe your rising sign, when I come out with that, will be better. Or maybe it's just not a time when you need to hear this particular message. But somebody does. More than one somebody out there does. Because my agreement with Sacred Spirit is that most of the messages that come through will apply to most of the Aries who watch this video. So for some of you, you are expanding your mediumship abilities, or you're learning mediumship abilities. And for others of you, there's just a particular person that you're communicating with. Maybe it's somebody who crossed over and you haven't been able to really say goodbye to them yet, something like that. But in the privacy of your own environment, you're communicating with that one person. Or for, I think for a couple of you, maybe this is more than one person. A couple of you that are not actually trying to learn mediumship, maybe you have more than one person that crossed over that you're talking to. Okay, so enough on environment. That was pretty heavy duty. Started off your reading pretty heavy duty. Let's see where it goes from here. The next thing we're looking at is subconscious leanings. Wow, okay. This could be a pretty heavy reading. All right, so subconscious leanings, what I'm seeing here for you, Aries, is that we have, you are really wanting to end a separation with somebody. Now, this could be in a relationship type thing where, you were dating somebody and now you've broken up, or maybe they're away for work or whatever. So this could be something about a relationship. This could even be about a friendship, or maybe you've moved away from home and you're homesick. But this really talks about wanting to be back together with somebody and ending some sort of separation. With what I came up with for what's going on in your environment, though, I've got to say I'm a little bit concerned that some of you may be wanting to, just cross over to the other side to be with this person that you're talking to. So for those of you who are talking to a particular person or persons, not just expanding your mediumship skills, I'm a little concerned that subconsciously you may be dabbling with the idea of crossing over so that you can end the separation between you and this other person. What I can say here is that as somebody who lost a significant other October 29th of 2011, I understand that, have been there, and what I can tell you is that it's not necessary to cross over to still be able to be with somebody who has already crossed over. The relationship is very different because they're not in tangible form, but communication is absolutely possible. And yeah, I don't think in any of these cases the person on the other side really wants you to just chase them over there. I am thinking that what I'm picking up here is a lot of them are concerned about this. Otherwise, they wouldn't be having it come up in a reading for me to talk to you about this. Because I asked Sacred Spirit, what is it that you want Aries to be aware of? This is kind of the question here when we look at this life cycle. So it's important to know that we don't have to cross over to have communication with that person who's already crossed over. We can have communication with them still. It's just different. You can't just send a text and hear a little ding whenever your text comes in from them. We have to be more on our toes about looking for messages from them whenever we've communicated with them to make sure that we don't miss them. So messages from the other side can include anything that has to do with energy or electricity, because once we leave our bodies, we are pure, unmitigated energy. And so, what is electricity? Energy. It's a form of energy. And so you can have your lights going dimmer, brighter. You can have things show up in your experience that remind you of that person. You can have certain songs that play on the radio, or certain songs that skip on your CD player, or I don't know if things skip on an MP3 player. I'm a little behind the times. But, spirit can mess with your computer, can mess with your TV. So all kinds of things electronically can happen for spirit to get a message through to you. And then also it's important to know that when you feel like the spirit of that person is near you, there's a reason for that. Okay? It's not because you're going insane. It's not because you're grieving. It's not because you miss them so much. It's because that person's spirit is trying to bring you some kind of consolation and trying to comfort you. And they are around you, and they want you to know that they're not gone just because they're not in a body. Okay? So for those of you who are considering crossing over to catch up with the other person, that's not necessary. It's absolutely not necessary. And if you're watching this video and you're that person, and I think there's more than one of you out there, and you would like to talk to me more about how spirits can give even lay people messages, feel free. You guys, all you have to do is check out my website. You can see my phone number right there. You see my email right there. Get a hold of me. I'll talk to you about this stuff. Okay? So that's what we have going on in subconscious leanings. We've already spent 10 minutes on this reading. We need to move along. I don't want to bore anybody here. Let's look at the next card we have coming up. This talks to me about learning style and also communication style for you right now. This, as far as communication style, that's the first thing that jumps at me. We're kind of back to this isolation card that we saw before in the environment. By the way, this is the balance card in reverse. And so we're back to this isolation thing as far as communication style. I don't see a lot of communication going on that's not absolutely necessary on your part. Other people might be trying to communicate with you, but you are you're just really focused on taking care of you right now. And yes, and whoever this is for, in a very desperate way. Now, like I said, this is really super specific. I don't know that this will apply to all Aries. So if it doesn't apply to you, don't worry about it. Don't try to make it fit if it doesn't fit, okay? Learning style. Learning style, I think, is pretty much shut down for those of you that I'm reading for right here. I just feel like learning is a little bit too much effort at the moment for a lot of you. And so that's kind of not even, it's non-existent at the moment. What you know is what you know. All right, the next thing that we're looking at does talk to me about work. I am funny about work. So this is going to be about work, how you make a living. This is also going to be about work, those things that you do to improve your inner self or your character to make you happier with you. Okay, so first we're going to look at outer work, that money-making type of thing. I just see that right now I feel like a lot of you have a nice, strong work situation, something that is secure and stable, but I don't see you really liking being at work right now. It's right now being at work is not your most happiness making thing. I think that in the past it has been, and in the future it will be again. But right now, working is kind of a little bit more than what you want to actually do if you had your choice. Let's see, inner work. For your inner work, I think that you're really just trying to find your grounding. You're trying to find your space. You're trying to find your place where you feel comfortable and like you're thinking about things in a sane way. That's what we have going on there. Now, the next thing, where you're being grown or expanded. This is my Seven of Vessels in this deck. Obviously, this means something completely different than a Seven of Vessels in another deck. This is literally my morning card. It does talk about great sadness every time it comes up. This can be great sadness about losing a relationship. This can be great sadness about losing a job. This can be great sadness about somebody who passed over. And I think, I'm really, the main theme that's coming out to me, Aries, is that whoever this reading is for, and like I said, I'm not sure it's for all Aries out there, whoever this reading is for, there's somebody that you're grieving for. That's what I really think. For the most of you, there is literally somebody that you're grieving for. And so whenever this card comes up in a place that talks about, where you're being grown or expanded right now, this is where you're spending a lot of energy, is on this grief. You're processing it. You're trying to get through it. Grief is not something that you can just snap your fingers and it's gone. Everybody handles grief in a different way, and everybody has a different time frame for how long they grieve for someone, depending on all kinds of things, depending on what the relationship was like with the other person, depending on what kind of expectations you had about doing things with that other person before they passed on, depending on how close you were to that other person, depending on how long you knew that other person, depending on how long you hoped to know that other person. There are so many factors. And so grief is different for all of us in every situation. You can have 5 people grieving for the same person, and each of those experiences is going to be a different grieving experience for that person. So, where I see that you're being grown or expanded here, what I want to caution you is that there will be a lot of people around you who have a lot of ideas about what grief is supposed to look like and what you should be doing now and when you should be over it. Guess what? Most of those people with all of those ideas have not been through it, and they don't know. Okay? Don't listen to them. Don't listen to them. Don't try to set yourself up by their ignorant standards. And I don't mean ignorant in a mean way. I mean literally ignorant. They don't know any better. They have good intentions for you. It's hard for them to see you hurting. They want you to feel better. They're hoping you'll feel better sooner. It's good intentions. Completely misguided. They are literally ignorant. Don't pay attention to them. And you don't even have to try to explain to them what grief is like, because they're not in a place to understand it. It's interesting to me when someone is grieving, there is the set of people that is grieving for the person, okay? And then there's this wider set of people that are grieving for the griever. They're so sad to see the griever so sad, and they just want to fix it. And they don't understand that part of fixing it is allowing that griever to go through the whole process. I don't know that griever is actually a word, but I think you guys know what I mean. So anyway, don't get hung up on what other people tell you your grief should look like. They don't know. Even if they are grieving for the same person as you are, and they're trying to tell you how your grief should be because they know how their grief should be, no, they still are ignorant because they don't know you. okay? They only know their experience. They can't tell you your experience. I couldn't tell you your experience, even though I've been through grief for someone significant, because my experience was not going to be the same as your experience is, okay? So don't try to hold yourself to somebody else's standards. That's just going to make it harder for you. Don't do that. Be who you are. Do what you need to do. If you have to cry and scream and smash rocks together, do it. If you have to lay in bed all day, and you don't have to be at work because, sometimes we have to keep the money coming in spite of grief. But if you want to spend the whole weekend curled up in the fetal position in your bed and just think and cry, do it. It's only going to last so long. After a while, you're going to adjust to the idea that things are different. But do what you need to do along the way. And don't let anybody tell you what you should be doing. Okay, so enough on that. This could end up being a very long reading. All right, next what we're looking at is things that you stand for. Okay, and so the card that we have coming up here is the World Tree. By the way, this is the Wildwood Tarot that I'm using. So when we've got the Worldwood Tree in reverse, the World Tree in reverse, it just means that you're standing up for the idea that it's going to take some time for you to get into a good place again. And you've already dealt with people who are trying to tell you, hey, snap out of it. And you've already had to tell them, hey, you don't know what you're talking about. Step off the curb, Jack. Okay? Now, this next card is going to talk about that person that you had to tell to step off the curb. It's going to, it's going to talk about how that person feels about you, what their perception of you is. Okay? So we've got the Great Bear once again in reverse. And this is basically what we were talking about earlier. That person they feel like you have climbed into the grave with the other person. And like you're just laying there hugging the casket or hugging the urn or whatever. That's what they feel like. And they are really desperate for you to come out. Okay? They are very concerned that if you stay in this situation that you will die too. And so they want you to come out. They want you to re-engage with the rest of the world. And this is a very big concern for them. They are seriously concerned about that. Okay? So now, everything that we've talked about so far, guys, is all the present tense stuff. That's all the setup for the lesson or experience here. Next, we're going to look at the lesson or experience. And then we're going to look at what happens as you incorporate that lesson or experience into your life. And so these things may be already starting to happen, or maybe you've already almost done with all these things. But if you don't recognize them, that's okay. Just know that they're coming up. And if you do, that's okay too. Now, if you went through this whole setup and it didn't speak to you at all, then this part of the reading is not going to speak to you at all either. It's not for you. Okay? If you didn't resonate with any of this first part of the reading, well, you're not going to resonate with the end either. Don't try to make it fit. Like I said earlier, don't try to make something fit that doesn't fit. Either this is going to resonate for you or not. And this is coming up really specific. So the people that it's going to resonate for is probably going to be a lot less than usual for my normal general readings. Okay, so let's look at lesson or experience for those of you that this does apply to who are Aries. Lesson or experience came up in the reverse too. This is Three of Bows. It's called Fulfilment in this deck. Now this deck obviously is very different from a lot of other decks. This is the deck I started out with. And so this is what I actually learned tarot on. And so there are quite a few cards that are very different. But anyway, Three of Bows in reverse. This talks about fulfillment in this deck. And in this particular deck, not all decks are like this, but where you see two trees or two pieces of wood, like where you see those two wands standing on either side of the trail, this talks about a decision. Okay, it talks about a decision. And so this, whenever I see this in reverse, this is telling me that you're going through some kind of confusion, Aries, about what it is that will make you feel fulfilled. What is it that'll make you feel fulfilled? How should you be grieving? Maybe these other people have your mind so whacked out that you're not even sure how you should be grieving. Follow your intuition. Follow your own leanings. Your body will tell you how to grieve. Your emotions will tell you how to grieve. Don't be trying to read a book about how to grieve. That's a crazy. That's a crazy. Okay? Don't try to do that to yourself. All right? And if this isn't about how to grieve, this is just saying that right now, feeling fulfilled seems so far away from you. Like you just don't even know which direction to go to feel fulfilled. And so the lesson or experience here is sorting all of that out, figuring out, okay, what do I do to feel fulfilled? That's your lesson or experience. The lesson or experience isn't finding that thing to feel fulfilled. It's the experience of sorting through things and figuring that out. Okay, having those experiences, having those adventures, figuring out, okay, is this the bunny trail I want to be following, or is there something else that'll make me feel more fulfilled? Experimenting with what does make you feel fulfilled. Okay, so that's what we have coming up as your lesson or experience right now. As you're going through this lesson or experience and incorporating this into your life, there are a few things going on, so we're going to take a peek at that. The first thing that's going on is my Five of Arrows. Now this talks about frustration, and a lot of decks it talks about conflict. I am feeling like there's a little bit of a combination actually happening here with, I think that there's frustration with the idea that there's conflict with other people. I think that there are things that you are expecting from other people as you're going through this process that they're not on that page. You know, maybe there are other people who are grieving for the same person and you're expecting them to act a certain way and that's not happening. And so that's really frustrating you. And maybe they don't understand you. And that's really frustrating. And if that's going on, I would encourage you to look up information about grieving, because basically there are two different types of grieving and they are completely opposed to each other. There's one type of grieving that kind of shuts everything down, takes time to process, and that is the grief. That is how the person feels like they are honoring the loved one who has passed. There's another kind of grief that keeps going forward as if nothing happened, or as close to that as the person can function. Just keeps moving, stays in motion all the time. And they consider that honoring that loved one. They consider that cherishing their life and showing that loved one that they are going to make sure that they value their life, because that loved one had a life and hopefully valued that life. And so they want to do the same with theirs as an honor to that other person. But what happens a lot of times is the people who are shutting down don't see what the people are doing who are going forward as an honor. They see it as, well, didn't you care? Okay, so if you have these two types of people who are grieving in two different ways in the same household, this can lead to a lot of friction and trouble. This can lead to problems. So it's really important to understand what's going on so that you guys can smooth out the edges. And not only for you to understand, but also if you can share what you find with this other person so that they can understand too, that's very helpful, so that you guys both kind of have an idea where the other person is coming from, even though you're not coming from that place. Okay, especially if I'm talking to some Aries who are married to each other, who are grieving the loss of somebody close to them. I have talked to so many people and done so many readings for people whose marriages fell apart when they lost a child, because they had two different grieving styles and they didn't understand each other and they got angry and resentful. Please don't let that happen to you. Find out about how other people grieve and try to understand and have compassion and try to be there for each other in the ways that each of you need, whether it's a spouse or not, but especially if we're talking about a spouse. Okay. Wow. So the next thing that we have coming up here, as you are looking for what makes you feel fulfilled now, because really your whole world has been changed. So the same things that made you feel fulfilled before may not even come close now. So as you're looking for what makes you feel fulfilled now, there are going to be some things that you discover about yourself that you never really realized before. For those of you who are talking to the person who's crossed over or communicating in whatever way to the person who's crossed over, it may be that suddenly you have a really big interest in mediumship, in extrasensory perception, in paranormal phenomena. And you may start really pursuing that. But there are going to be, whether it's that or whether it's something else, there are going to be things coming up that you did not realize about yourself that you're going to start to explore as you're looking for your fulfillment. And then for a lot of you, I do see that as you are looking for this fulfillment, you are going to be interacting with somebody who has also been affected by this death. And this person is somebody who tries to look at things in everyday life very logically. They don't really pay a lot of attention to emotions. If anything, they kind of suppress their emotions. And so this is a person that you're interacting with as you're going through this situation yourself. And this person has also been greatly affected by the death. But because they're not used to paying attention to their emotions, and now their emotions are kind of overriding everything else, this has this person in a completely different mind space. This has a person completely freaked out, to be honest, and very moody because this person, probably a male for most of you, this person does not even know what to do with all these emotions to express them in a healthy way. He doesn't have practice doing this. He has nothing to fall back on. His fallback has always been think things through, think things through, think things through. Well, you can't think this thing through. If you think this thing through, you just go in circles and you get deeper and deeper entangled into sadness. And so, or anger, for some of them, anger. And so this person's going to be pretty moody, pretty hard to deal with. All right? Going back to the two different types of grieving, where if you're processing in a pretty healthy way and this person is not, this is going to be tough to deal with. You're already grieving. Now you got to deal with this guy who's kind of losing his mind while you're grieving. So really important to try to understand where each of you is coming from. And this person, honestly, may not understand where they're coming from. They may not be able to tell you where they're coming from. So this is not an easy thing. This is something that's going to take some work to be able to try to see where this person is coming from and try to have compassion for them as you're going through this whole situation with trying to find what makes you feel fulfilled now. Okay? And for some of you, part of the reason you don't know what makes you feel fulfilled now is because things have changed so dramatically for this other person as well. So that's what we have, Aries. For those of you that it doesn't apply to, I'm sorry, this wasn't your time to get a message, apparently. For those of you that it does apply to, I just want to send you great big hugs and all kinds of encouragement that, if this is really super hard right now, but things do get better over time. We get adjusted to how things are over time. We never forget this person. It just doesn't happen. I think everybody's kind of afraid, well, what if I forget this person? That is not going to happen. You don't have to worry about it. But things, you will get adjusted to living life without them over time. And so, and that's not a wrong thing, because they don't want you to shut down your life because they're not here anymore. They still want you to live and fulfill your purpose and do your thing and find your happiness. So anyway, I hope that those of you that this resonated with, I hope that it helped you immensely. And I will see you guys the next time around. Sending you big hugs, lots of love, peace.